All right, everybody, I have a couple minutes after 10. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully the people that we're missing will just kind of trickle in as we go. Just an FYI that this session is going to be recorded for the benefit of the WISs and the VR counselors that weren't able to join us today. There are a couple things that we wanted to do. Number one is we just wanted to kind of get your feedback on some of the MAX sessions that you've delivered. Feedback that you've received from clients and your own personal reflections. And then we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the ways that we could improve upon the service and make it better. You know, as with any new service, there's always a learning curve when we try to implement something new. So I'm sure there are ways that we could tweak the service, and we welcome your feedback into how we can make it more productive and better. So, and saying that, just wanted to open it up to the group to kind of give some feedback on some of your previous sessions that you delivered. Like, what do you feel has worked about the sessions and what hasn't worked?
Hi, this is Anne from Manassas. I guess I'll start. I did 3 MAX sessions. And I felt that the labor market information was well received by the students. And also when I talked about financial information, and I had the little booklets behind on bills, and the other one called that Getting in Your Way, and talking about the paycheck and learning how to read the paycheck and so forth. That was well received. It was more difficult, I think, for them to understand the information regarding SSI and the calculation and so forth. I think that went over their heads.
Sure, yeah, and that's always confusing, especially for people hearing it for the first time. So that's going to be difficult, but you thought that the financial stuff was well received, and you're using the Your Money, Your Goals tools.
Yes.
As part of the session, so that's great.
And I gave them each a booklet. I had ordered some booklet, and I gave them each a booklet, and I had marked the pages that I was talking about, so they could reference and take that home as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's a great idea. Good use of the material.
Yes.
Sorry I'm late, folks. I had trouble connecting.
Oh, that's okay. Good morning, David. Anybody else have any feedback that they want to share about the sessions that they've conducted thus far?
Hi, this is Jonathan from the Choice Group. I'm waving at my computer even though my camera's not on. But yeah, the sessions that I've been doing have been going relatively well. The students seem engaged. The material is I try to make it as entertaining as possible. I guess my feedback / question is going to be what exactly is expected of us in the MAX presentations, because I've been getting a lot of referrals to do them, and they seem to be going well. But in listening to, say, Miss Lane is going over like the contents of a paycheck to say how that's helpful, and there's also the Your Money, Your Goals toolkits being handed out, and the Social Security information is going over some of the students' heads. I've been glossing over a lot of the Social Security stuff, given that we don't know who in the room has Social Security, and focusing on benefits that people may or may not have without that information ahead of time has just seemed problematic to go into stuff that might alienate most of the audience if they're not actually receiving a benefit. So I guess my question and hope for this session is to kind of get a clear guideline on what MAX is and what it is expected of us for the presentation itself.
Well, I think that the biggest piece is the labor market information that you're going through, making sure that they understand the job duties and educational requirements of the careers that they're interested in, and the salary ranges for both experienced and entry-level workers is the big piece. I think you're right that we did say that we wanted you to go through some of the work incentive stuff and the budgeting stuff, but there are going to be people in the audience that either don't have any benefits, or like Ann said, that the information might be too comprehensive and over their heads. So maybe one of the things that we can do, rather than having you go through the entire budgeting examples and all the work incentives, is just maybe hand out some at-a-glance sheets with an SSI calculation on it, maybe an at-a-glance sheet on Medicaid Works or IRWI that they can take home and share with their parent or their teacher or whoever that they're working with, and make sure they have your business cards if they want to follow up for more specific information. That way they go away with some general information on what the work incentive is, and they know how to reach out to you if they want more information, but yet you don't have to go through all the information in the session. I'm thinking that might be a better way to address that issue of people not understanding the budgeting stuff when it comes to SSI.
And Michael, I did that. I had a packet ready for them to give to their parents.
That's great. Yeah, that might be a better way to address it. Jonathan, does that answer your question?
Only sort of. I guess the feedback that we've been getting from the DARS counselors for the presentations that they're asking us to perform seem different from office to office. So narrowing down what it is that DARS as a whole is looking for in a MAX presentation so that we can form that to make it consistent and kind of mold what we're able to provide along with what DARS is to expect from us would be really helpful.
Hey guys, this is Jessica. I just want to chime in for a minute. First, thanks to everyone who's been providing MAX and helping us to develop this service and participating today. And thanks to Jonathan and Ann for your feedback and questions. In terms of the purpose of MAX, it really is that focus on the career pathways. We're trying to get to students and families early, so whether or not they have benefits, they're understanding that earned income more times than not is going to have the individual walk away with more money than if they're relying on benefits. So it is really great, like Ann, how you mentioned, you give them information to take home to further explore, but we don't have to go into too much detail about all the SSI ins and outs. This is more to focus on the career pathways, the labor market, and really energize students and families about that ability to go to work and how that's going to benefit them long term. So to answer your question, Jonathan, the intent of this service is to be introductory, to focus on some career pathways, and just to help people understand that having a goal of employment is something that's realistic, feasible, and beneficial. And I think what we're going to talk about later on this morning about a new service that's in the works, that one might help, like blended together with MAX, might help with what you're hearing from the DARS counselors as a need, if that makes sense.
Hey guys, I just want you to know I'm here. This is Matt. I got all kinds of technical difficulties, so my office phone is my cell phone. So I hope that nobody calls me and it causes a distraction, because I don't know what to do if it does.
Okay.
I'm glad you can join us, Matt, because hopefully you'll have some good insight as well about what's going on and what's been useful and what counselors are looking for. And we can figure out if MAX is the best route to go, or maybe the newer service that we're developing.
Yeah, I can just, I don't know when you guys want me to talk, but when you want me to talk, just say so. I can just tell you lessons learned from what we've tried to do so far. And the main lesson I'm learning is when I rely on the schools to do anything, it doesn't get done. And so I have to take more initiative to contact parents, to inform them about the meetings, to get some kind of an RSVP ahead of time from parents and participants, so that when we show up at a meeting, it's kind of not a haphazard. But, you know, the choice group and Jonathan have provided, I think, extremely valuable presentations in our area. It's just sometimes we get a lot of parents to attend and sometimes we don't. And that's my lesson learned. I have to do a better job informing people and not rely on some of my school teachers to inform the parents or my school contacts, because I find out that a lot of times that's not getting done. So that's my biggest lesson that I can tell you guys about today. But as far as the value goes, I'm sorry.
So, Matt, I was just going to ask, so you actually do reach out and have parents attend?
Yes, we try very hard to get the parents to attend. The sad thing is I don't always know what parents are going to be there, only by what the school system and that my contacts tell me. And then we might have a group of 12 students with an applied studies diploma, for example, and one parent come or two parents come when we wish we had more than two, because then they find out about it, because Jonathan and the choice group do such a good job of giving them information with business cards to contact them. And then I get all these calls from parents saying, I wish I would have known that you guys were doing this. And I'm like, damn, I wish I would have told you. I thought the school was going to tell you. And then I find out that sometimes there's just that breakdown in communication.
Well, so the reason I ask is, for the other folks who have provided the service, did you have parents show up? And maybe part of what, because this is still somewhat new, maybe part of what we also need to do is give counselors a little more instruction on how to work on setting these up.
Hi, David. It's Missy with ServiceSource. I did not have any parents attend. Ours was in the middle of the day, and when we talked to the counselor, it seemed like it was supposed to be focused more on the students. And the counselor just wanted us to work with the students.
Yeah, good morning.
Same here. Same
I was going to add in, this is Erin Lloyd from the Choice Group. A lot of mine have also just been with the students. I've done one recently with parents as well. It kind of depended on what the DARS counselor was looking for, but I personally kind of liked it when it was just the students, because then they were speaking instead of their parents speaking for them, and I really got their feedback and could talk at their level. So personally, I really liked it when it was in the classroom just with the students, and those were during the school day.
Yeah, now we did that, and the only issue is sometimes if parents have questions, then they can ask the WISA, Jonathan, Milton, Beth, whoever it is, after the presentation. A lot of times the parents, even if they were in attendance, they didn't really speak up. The purpose of the parents was for if they had a personal question that they could ask after the presentation, or a private question that they wanted to ask. And that was the purpose of having the parents there. At least that was my interpretation of it. But for the majority of the presentations, even if they're just for the students, they've been beneficial. Without a doubt, it's just that I would say 6 out of 7 of the presentations have been phenomenal. One was just the students were cognitively very limited, and it would have been probably better if we had more parents there. But that, that's a learning experience. But I mean, what I'm doing here, what I say, you do what works. So if it's working for those people without the parents, then that's their, don't mess up anything that's working.
I agree. I definitely think it depends on the group. And the one I did with parents was a little more geared towards benefits, more so than the job information, but that one tended to be more for the parents and the students. In that case, it was kind of the parents bringing the students. I get what you're saying, and I like that idea too. And I think part of today we'll get more clarification on maybe making these a little more streamlined to kind of know ahead of time what the goal is and being able to plan accordingly.
So hey, this is Jess again. Part of the goal is to make sure that families are also understanding how working is something that's realistic for their children, and how that how there are different incentives out there if they're worried about losing benefits, or, you know, to support someone to get off benefits, or maybe to help them realize they don't even need to apply. So I am wondering if we could, you know, through everyone's experience, develop more guidelines about what could be the most effective use of Max. Like maybe it's saying that this is a 2-session thing, where the first session it's meeting with students and developing that rapport and getting them engaged and just learning about career pathways. And then the follow-up session is bringing parents in as feasible and kind of letting them know what you talked about with the students, and then maybe going into a little bit more detail, not too much, but a little bit more detail about how working can be a goal for a student and just some of the different work incentives. Because I think it is super important to make that connection with the students and get them engaged, and not have it be a scenario where kind of parents run the session. But then I also think it's really important that parents are informed, and a lot of times handouts, you know, we can't guarantee that they get home to the parent. So that's just one idea. I don't have the solution yet, but I'd love to hear what, you know, other people's experiences have been, and maybe ideas that they have, to make sure we're getting the full message out to all the intended parties.
I do really like that idea of kind of a 2-part approach. I think that would really be helpful in making sure you're connecting with the students, but also getting the parents the information. Because you're right, I used to be a teacher. You never know if the handouts actually get home or not. You hope that they do, but that would, you know, help alleviate that concern.
All right. Is there anybody else that has any experiences that they want to share before we move on to the next item?
I just wanted to, this is Missy again. I just wanted to touch back about the benefits counseling piece. When we did ours, we were concerned as well about it being a little confusing for students. So we decided, like, we went over some of the super basics, gave them, you know, some handouts and one specifically for parents. But then we did all scenario-based situations. So actually kind of putting it together with like a career pathway and someone on SSI, and showing how, you know, you get more Starburst to budget with or whatever when you go to work. So we did a lot of our scenario-based for the students, just because we were concerned about, you know, being dry and the worst presentation a student's ever seen. And it seemed to work pretty well. We also did, and I don't know, I'm sure other people did too, surveys at the end, just to get the students' feedback and the teachers' feedback as well. So that might be something you want to gather from us. Like, I don't know if we were asked to turn that stuff in when we turned in our billing for it.
You know, we didn't necessarily require that as part of the documentation requirements, but if you have those, we would, you know, we would love to see them.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of think it would be interesting to see other people's presentations too, just to see how they organize it. Since everybody kind of, this is the first time we did it, we all kind of created something. So it would be kind of neat to see other PowerPoints the other people did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to mention, Missy, thanks so much for bringing that up, because we received really good feedback about your presentation and how it was so interactive. So this reminds me that I did want to mention to people that any way that you can include a game or something, like how they use Starburst to help, so it's more like a visual, and also that kinesthetic understanding, because they're taking away or adding the Starburst. And I know ServiceSource isn't the only agency that's done that, but that, from the counselor's perspective, the ones that I've spoken with, that's been really an effective way to engage the students, but also to help solidify that understanding of the information presented.
And that's one other comment real quick, and then I'll be quiet for a while and let someone else talk. I just also felt like what was asked of Max was very different than what we did the community financial empowerment training. And I know that you can't do the Max training if you haven't done the community financial empowerment training. I just felt like when I got the requirements for Max, didn't really align at all with what we had been trained on. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there, and we'd love to get more people at ServiceSource able to do this training.
Well, and Missy, this is David. So it's a very valid point. We are still trying to figure out what and how these things are going to align and work. The other service we're going to talk about, I think, will make more sense as to why we went this route. And part of where I see the alignment is not just in the specific material that was covered in the community financial empowerment, but the kind of the themes and ideas behind it of positive framing and messaging. And so some of those pieces, it isn't specifically, oh, I was asked to do A, B, and C, but thematically and where we're trying to go with this stuff, we felt like it was a good foundation for what we are working on building. I will say that we are planning to have some sessions, and we will hopefully get those scheduled for May. But frankly, because I have a grant that just started and we have to hire a position, we just don't have the bandwidth, to use a term from that training, to schedule until a couple of other things are more solidified. And I believe there's also been talk that there would be a session at Collaborations, but our plan is to actually have a session in the Northern Virginia area and invite any of those other WISAs that wanted to participate. And to speak to something Jessica said, the focus really is more on the career pathway. The reason we wanted this training to be done by WISAs is because there might be folks in the room who say, oh, but I can't do that because of this, or their family might say, I can't let my son or daughter do this. And we thought by having someone who could speak about the student earned income exclusion and things like 1619B and PASS, and would be that extra level of expertise that would engage someone to really get to let them think about their career pathway and what they really wanted without that no but. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
And David, can I just add to you guys? So we've done, I don't know how many presentations we've done now. I think approximately 8, and some of the audience has been students with standard diplomas, and sometimes the audience has been students with applied diplomas. I think the presentation is really good in the fact that it's engaging, and if the students and or parents in attendance they definitely get stuff out of it. It's just when you have students with higher cognitive abilities, sometimes they can be more responsive and get more engaged. I think I like what we're doing. One of the things I need to work on is just the communication piece. I like the suggestion that for feedback that someone mentioned, and I like hearing some of the interactive games. But I think the presentation that Jonathan's been doing has just been, it's been a discussion about a variety of things, not just touching on work incentives, and that he is a WISA and he's here to help if anybody has further information. But he does touch on the whole labor market, transferable skills, career pathways, all those things in his presentation. But based on what I'm hearing, it's just narrowing down some good suggestions for how to make it more engaging, more creative, more interactive, and then making sure that we get feedback. And maybe not so much just people telling us their feedback, but maybe doing it in a more formal way, where we just have them answer like a post-test kind of pre-test, post-test type thing, like we've been doing with everything else. It doesn't have to be anything real elaborate, just 5 or 6 questions. I don't know. But So that's really all I got to say. I appreciate everybody's feedback because it helps me think about what we could do to enhance ours.
Yeah, and I think, it's important to remember that, in any session, not everybody in the group is going to get all the information that they need out of a 60 or 90-minute session. So the most important thing is that they, come away, with maybe some handouts on the work incentives pieces and your contact information, where they can follow up individually if they need to. But these are good suggestions on how we can improve the service and make it better. I think the consensus is that some of the work incentives pieces have been over a lot of the participants' heads, and we might want to scale back on that a little bit and focus a little bit more on the career pathways pieces. So that's a good suggestion. And I'd say that if anybody else has any suggestions about how to improve the service or make it better, feel free to reach out at any time, and we'll take it under consideration. So we already talked a little bit about how we can improve on the service. One of the suggestions I had was to maybe start using some additional tools. I know that last week I sent out some information on how to access a site called Virginia Career Explorer. And on Friday of last week, I started playing around with it. I created an account. It's free to do that. And I started using some of the tools. And there was a really neat one that I thought might be beneficial to you guys when it came to the career pathways part of the presentation. There's a Career Explorer on there that allows you to compare different careers within a career cluster. So for an example, let's say you were presenting to a group of students that were interested in human services, but they weren't exactly sure what job they wanted to go for. You could compare, let's say, a VR counselor with a general human service assistant. And it'll give you a side-by-side comparison of those jobs in terms of like salary ranges, job duties. It'll tell you whether the need for the job is increasing or decreasing. The information does come from ONET, so it might not be too terribly different from what you're already doing. But I just thought that if you had a training location with internet access where you could actually hop on the website and go through how to use some of the tools, it might be a way to keep the students a little bit more engaged and interested in the stuff rather than just giving it to them. Just actually showing how to use the tool. So that was just one suggestion on how we could incorporate a new tool. Open to any others. Let me just ask this. I know it's been about a week since I sent out the information. Has anybody had a chance to look at that yet? Or use any of the tools?
Oh.
No, sorry.
Who did you send it to, Michael?
I started with the WISs that were certified to do the max sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I don't think I got that email, so that's all. I was just clarifying.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I can send that to you as well. That's no problem. But if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, just go on. It only takes about 5 minutes to create an account. It's pretty simple. It's free to use most of the tools, and just go on there and just look at some of the resources they have, because I think it might be a good tool to incorporate in some of your sessions to keep the kids a little bit more interested. All right. Anybody else have anything to add to the piece on ways we can improve? Or David or Jess, anything that you want to add to that?
I don't have anything right now. Thanks. Oh, actually, no, I do have a question. So is it clear now what Max is intended to do, or is that still foggy, and do we need to put out better guidance. And I would encourage people to refer back to how Max is described in the WISA manual, because it does emphasize, this is just giving people an overview of different career pathways, that kind of want to check in where people are at now so we can figure out how to make sure both in-house, but then with our WISAs, that everyone's understanding the intended purpose of Max.
That all seems reasonable. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
Okay,
And-
great.
Yeah, I just want to add, because I appreciated the discussion around parents being involved, and I know we've also done sessions that were specific to project search sites. So I'm trying to, just before we leave the topic of Max, what I'd like to ask, and maybe if this was asked at the very beginning and when I couldn't connect, I apologize, but what about, for those of you providing the service, in terms of picking a specific career pathway, or how you were going to do that, or did you do it in a very general way? I'm just, if we could spend a couple minutes on that, if I missed that, I can get it from Mike later.
No, you didn't. And that's a great question, because we had talked about wanting to go over that. So thank you for remembering to bring that up.
For my career pathway, I talked to the counselor to kind of see what the students were doing, and maybe I left out because they were all interning at a hospital. So we definitely used that as a couple of scenarios.
Well, and so that's actually a great part of why this came up, Missy, is what we found is when we looked at what individuals' goals were, even if they were at a project search site, they weren't necessarily all, the goals didn't all fit with any one career pathway. And that's sort of why I wanted to ask a little more about what that looked like. And
Hi, this is Anne. I provided the Max services at all the project search trainings. And what I did, I asked the DARS counselors what were the goals of each kid. And I had a folder prepared for each of them with labor information and everything.
And
Wow.
you had separate career pathways for each person?
Yes.
Wow.
Each of them
Cool.
with the folder with the labor and market information. And then during the group, we went through each of them. So everybody got to hear about all the jobs.
Were you able to get what the students wanted goals were before you did the training, or you did it just live there?
No, I asked the DARS counselor to give me all that before so I could prepare.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Maybe one of the things we make sure is clear is, as a best practice, that counselors share those goals. I thought we had that, but
We could say as part of the referral that you include the goals of the students in the group. That might be a good way to address that one.
Yeah, I'll go back in the manual and make sure that that's there, and if it's not, I'll change it, because that's important. Okay,
Yeah,
is there
as
any?
much information as we can get about the audience ahead of time would be super helpful for how to frame the presentation itself. So that would be wonderfully helpful.
Agreed.
Well, I can speak on that. There was one presentation we did, and I need to do better. I think it all comes down to communication and the relationships with your schools. And for my case, I don't do project search anymore, so I have to get the VR counselor. But I know the very first Max presentation we tried to do, we did it at our office. I had 4 people that agreed to come, and then 1 only showed up. So lesson learned, don't do it at your office. Do it at the site. Well, then I have to communicate with the VR counselor, and they have to communicate with their team to make that happen. And since then, we do it at the schools, because after you learn that lesson of only having one participant, you realize this could be done much better. So everyone is getting better. It's just that I do think that sometimes when the audience is so limited, if the students are so significantly disabled, that we got to really be creative on how we present the information. And I only ran into that once, where they weren't very engaged. They just kind of stared, and then it's just a little hiccup. My usual presenter wasn't there, and the other presenter wasn't aware that someone was nonverbal, so they kept asking them questions, and that falls back on me, not informing them who the audience is. So I think the biggest takeaways for me has just been try it, learn from your mistakes, and try to improve it, and communication and informing everybody, including the presenter, making sure they have the most information up front about the audience, and everything makes everything run a lot smoother. So that's on me when it doesn't work, and that's what I'm learning.
Well, it's a learning process. You live and learn.
Yeah, and Matt, actually, part of what I'm going to say, and I think we recognized when we set this up that there were going to, we can never have, this is always going to be one of those services that we're not going to have the best information at all times, just partly because of the nature of how we track information for pre-ETs in general and some of the other issues. And it goes back to part of what we had wanted originally was this idea of takeaways, so that if somebody wasn't in a position to fully be engaged, or maybe they needed a different level of support than we had thought of, that information they went home with might still prompt other conversations. And I feel like that was in there, but
yeah. Oh no, it was, and I felt good. I just felt bad because it just one time Jonathan couldn't present, and I had a substitute, and it's just simple communication, things that you take for granted, and then you realize halfway in, oh crap, I could have done this differently, But so that's the only thing. The mistakes that I'm learning that I need to do differently as a pre-ETS counselor. But as far as the value of this service, I think it's extremely valuable. And I think someone made a good point. It's really the communication piece between the counselor and the presenter, the vendor. What is the purpose, and who's the audience, and who do we want to participate, and the rest of it you guys have already touched on. So.
Okay, is there anything else before we move on from Max? All right, so let me take a few minutes then to talk to you a little bit about our newest WISA billable service. And can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't get on, but it's okay. Don't worry about me, you guys. I'll get it from you later, Michael or Jonathan. We're having all kinds of internet problems in Williamsburg, so I can't load Zoom.
Sure, no problem. So this is from the WISA manual that I just updated with the new description for the new service, and I will send this out to everybody. But this new service that we just got approval for is geared toward helping clients increase their budgeting skills as a WISA billable service. And it's similar to Max in the way that any WISA who is certified to do Max would also be certified to provide this service. The referrals would come from the VR counselors, and the audience would most likely be, most of the time, transition stage students that are eligible for pre-ETs and receiving pre-ET services. All right, so the way the curriculum is set up is that you would use tools from Your Money, Your Goals, or Money Smart or another DARS approved curriculum such as Next Gen Personal Finance, and teach the clients how to use these tools to help them increase their budgeting skills. So like, for example, if you were to use Your Money, Your Goals, you might want to go through with them the standard budgeting tool that's in there, but you also might want to talk to them a little bit about using the bill pay calendar that's in there so they can keep track of when their bills are due. Or you might want to also go through the income and expense tracker so that they can keep track of what they have coming in and going out every month. All right, and the reason why we did this is because with these students that you're going to be presenting to, most of them have very little to no work experience. They might have been on SSI, you know, if they're under 18, they have rep payees. They've never had to budget their own money, and they lack very basic budgeting skills. So we felt like this was a very valuable service for these kids to know how to do when they're first thinking about going into the workforce and have money to budget for the first time. All right, so there's a couple of different pieces to the curriculum that we ask that you touch on. As with Max, the services can be tailored to the needs of the specific audiences, but there's a couple of things that we ask that you cover to make sure they understand leaving the session. Number one is we want you to talk a little bit about how students can budget for work-related expenses. So in other words, how much is it going to cost them for appropriate work clothing every month? How much are they going to spend on meals at work? Any expenses related to work. Make sure that they understand how to budget for transportation, like how are they going to get to work? Are they going to drive themselves, or are they going to take public transport or Uber or whatever? How much is that going to cost them per month to get back and forth? That could maybe open up a discussion if you wanted to touch on work incentives, on Burlby or Pass, or ways that a client could utilize a work incentive to help pay for that service. And then we want you to talk a little bit about the importance of understanding credit. Now, you don't have to go into a whole lot of detail about that, but if you're using Your Money, Your Goals for an example, you might want to go through the sample credit report that's in there. Make sure that they understand the different parts of the credit report. Show them what it looks like, and at very least, give them the contact information for the 3 credit bureaus so they know how to access their credit report. A lot of kids, obviously, that haven't worked before have little to no credit, and they don't understand that, you know, a negative credit score could impact their ability to get a job in the future, or an apartment, or a car, or many of the other things that they need to be productive. And so you want to make sure that they understand at least the basics of what the credit report looks like, why the credit report score is important, and how to access and interpret the reports. All right, so the sessions can be anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes. Wouldn't recommend going any longer than 90 minutes just for the purpose of attention spans, you know. Might be hard for the kids to keep their interest longer than that. It can be done in either a group session like Max, or an individual session, one-on-one. And again, both the individuals and the group session would come from the VR counselors. And after you deliver the sessions, there's a couple different things that we require as documentation for payment. So number one, you would just write up a brief report talking about which tool you use, whether it be like Your Money, Your Goals, or Money Smart. Another suggestion I have about a curriculum that you might be able to use in providing this service is another tool from the Virginia Career Explorer that I talked about a minute ago. There's also a budgeting tool in there that I thought was really cool. What it allows you to do is to come up with a budget based on the client's location. What you do is you put in the client's zip code, and the site can kind of calculate the cost of living for the client based on where they're at. And then you can put in things like, well, do you plan to rent your home, or do you plan to purchase a home? Do you have a car payment? Do you eat out, or do you cook at home most of the time? And based on your answers, the program kind of calculates how much the client would spend on rent, on food, on utilities based on their location. And then it tells you, okay, based on what you put in, the client needs, let's say, $2,500 a month to live. And so they should gear their employment search towards jobs that would allow them to make $50,000 or more. So I kind of thought that was a neat tool that maybe you could use as part of your curriculums too, to supplement any other ones that you're using.
And Mike, can I stop for 1 second right there, just because this is David again. I want to, again, just emphasize part of our goal with these and part of why we feel they do fit with that financial empowerment is both of these services, Max and this, one of our hopes is that they are motivators and encouraging for those pre-ET students to think broader than maybe they would have on their own. And that tool Mike just described, to me, does exactly that. If we can get these students thinking about what they want their life to be like and help them talk about the kind of money they will need to do that, part of our hope over time is that it will encourage people to work at higher levels of earning and greater independence.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line is, showing clients that they are always going to be better off working than not. And not to focus so much, if they are on benefits, how their benefit check is going to go down, but how their overall income is going to increase when they go to work is the main purpose. So in terms of documentation, you're going to write up a report talking about which curriculum you used and what tools you covered. So did you just do the basic budget sheet? Did you go through the bill pay calendar with them? Did you talk to them about the tool, how to interpret or credit report? And then attach any activities that you did with that. Like if you had the clients develop a budget during the session, you would attach a copy of the budget with your report. If you're doing a one-on-one individual session, the budget is something that we would actually require you to do with the client. If you're doing a group session, you might not necessarily have the time to do a whole budget with somebody. You might just be able to do an overview of how to use the tools. But if you're doing a one-on-one session, we do ask that you do help them develop a budget as part of the service delivery, and then come up with a spending plan based on that budget. So for an example, you write a report up for the client and the counselor that says something like, okay, we talked about how you spend $450 a month on rent, you spend X on groceries, X on transportation, X on utilities, whatever it is. This is how much we talked about that you would need to make every month. These are ways that we talked about how you might be able to cut your expenses to meet, some of these other things that you need. Whatever you talked about in the session, you would detail in a report that would go with that budget. And then you would submit that along with the authorization to the VR counselor. Yeah. Make sense?
It does.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's for the individual sessions. Are there any requirements for, aside from the basic documentation, since there's no individual budget, what other documents will we need for a group session?
So with the group session, you would just write up a report detailing what curriculum you used and what tools were covered. Also, I think it might be a good idea as part of that is to do the client surveys that we talked about for Max possibly implementing. David, we might just want to come up with a brief survey to give to the clients at the end of the session, like, did you find this helpful? how do you plan to use the tools to apply to your life, that sort of thing. I think that might be helpful for a group session to get that kind of feedback on.
Michael, can I just ask a quick question? So is this going to be part of the incorporated in the Max presentation, or is this a separate after we do the Max presentation? I'm just I came in late, so I apologize. If you could clarify that for me?
Yeah, sure. No, this is a brand new service. This would be separate from the Max session itself.
So
And
maybe
this one is specifically related to helping a client understand how to develop and follow a budget.
Okay.
So it could be, Matt, it could be a good follow-up, but it wouldn't be like Max is a requirement for someone to participate in before they do this,
right,
or after. So, but you could definitely blend them together or sequence them in a way where it would be beneficial for a student. And just to update everyone, so after the call today, we're going to send an announcement to the field, hey, this is a new service that's up and coming, but it's not something that you could start providing tomorrow just because we need to have an opportunity to train the DARS counselors in it. And I think what would be the best use of our time is then to also do a follow-up about Max, and that's a good opportunity for us to give them a reminder about what Max is for and how this call and how, now please send students career interest when you do the referrals. So don't expect we'll want to know from you guys which of you want to provide this service so we can get you set up in the system. But it's not something that you would expect referrals on tomorrow just because we have to make sure everyone understands that it's out there and what it's for. But I do see different ways that Matt's question was great because it shows how we can, like I said before, sequence services to benefit particular students' needs. So I think in theory, students could participate in this as a group, but I could also see for some students, maybe a follow-up individual session could be useful to develop that personalized budget or to go over the concepts discussed and just help the student really conceptualize it. So there's flexibility in how we offer and arrange these services so that we're making sure it's really sinking in for the student.
Yeah, and go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I wanted to add to that. One of the things we thought about as we were working on this, if you have a student who is going to have a summer job, maybe that session includes, hey, you're going to be working this summer. You need to save any of that for future education expenses. Are you trying to save up for a car? And some of those kind of things are exactly why we wanted credit to be a part, because I know when we gave everyone the next gen personal finance tools, one of the activities showed people how 3 people with different credit scores could pay as much as $400 difference a month for the exact same vehicle. And again, it's not that we want folks to become experts on this at this stage, but some basic understanding might help shape decisions. And then from your perspective, does this sound like the service you'd authorize, and is there anything we've left out?
Yeah, so I wanted to tell you guys this. I would authorize this, and I'll give you a good example. So I have kids that get jobs at Busch Gardens, and Busch Gardens pays them using a debit card. So I had a parent who last year, we helped the son get the job, and then the parent was fussing at me because the kid was blowing his paycheck every weekend because he didn't understand how much was on that debit card. He just thought it was unlimited. And so this, I could see, would be a perfect way to help any individual who we got a summer job with, especially not just with using this debit cards as payment, but understanding your paycheck, helping them go through the paycheck, and things like that.
So Matt, part of what we wanted to do, and that's actually a perfect example. So because we want you to be able to use your experience and expertise to make sure this is valuable for each individual. So maybe if you're working with a group who get those summer jobs, part of what you're asking that WISA to do is, hey, if they do get paid on a debit card, that person can still have a regular bank account, a savings account, and they could set up automatic deposits from the debit to their savings. So it could be something as simple as that becomes a part of that conversation. And again, what you're doing is helping create, hopefully, a positive behavior that will be very important down the road when it comes to the world of work after high school.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know too many parents that I don't meet that don't tell me that once they get money, the kids blow it on a weekend. You know, they just don't understand how to save it, how to manage it, and then for even the future, would you be able to survive on this and things like that. So, yeah, I really like the idea. If I got some people that get these summer jobs right now, I'm sure it'd be helpful. You know, in each case is different, but for the majority, I don't know too many people that wouldn't want someone to help their son or daughter learn how to budget their money. So it's just my opinion. Some people get a little funky when it gets, you know, how private is private, but the benefits, I think, would be, there are definitely benefits to this, and I would definitely authorize it.
Now, not to interrupt, just a quick question as far as the authorization for this service goes. So is there anything stopping DARS from authorizing both group and individual sessions like back to back? Because starting off with the group session and then working towards an individual one sounds like an ideal situation to do overview and then more detailed work. But if it's being authorized, say, within a month of itself, that could be problematic as far as tracking and billing and all that.
Yeah, I could see, you know, both a group and an individual session working for somebody. I mean, there's going to be people that don't necessarily get everything they need in a group setting, you know, based on cognitive levels and things like that. There are going to be people that need one-on-one individual sessions. So,
well, I mean, and even just by the very nature of doing group work, you have to appeal as much as you can to get as much general information out to the people that you're talking with. And then the individualized sessions where you're developing a budget, where you're working side by side with someone working on the paperwork, you know, can take the information from the group session, make it practically applied, and then have that be, you know, far more beneficial. But if they've just gone through the group session, would there be a problem with then authorizing the individual session?
I don't see an issue with that at all if it's needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And really, for that kind of thing, my hope would be that if a group session happened and you as the provider saw that there was a need or opportunities for certain people to capitalize on more in-depth, that you and that pre-ETS counselor would shortly after, based on the information you shared with that individual, with that counselor, be in a position to work on those authorizations. Because, does that make sense? So, like, ideally, the information you're sharing back is going to help support that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my question or concern is really that if a counselor were to see that this session was just authorized and then we're asking for it again, to be able to say, here's why it's important for this person at the time in this particular instance, and to work it out on an individual basis. Because, you know,
so I think it would be more just not jumping into the authorization. I think some counselors up front will know, hey, let's do both the group, and then I'm going to already authorize for the individual. But I think, you know, before just requesting another authorization, it would be follow up with the counselor. This is how the group went. This is why I think this person, who we haven't already talked about doing an individual follow-up, why it would be beneficial. Then I don't think you'll get any pushback. And again, we will present this to the field so that they understand that that's definitely an option and might be the best route for some students. But I also want to mention that all of these services are not just for, they're not going to be coordinated just by pre-employment counselors. Right. So students with disabilities we have potentially eligible students with disabilities served by the pre-ETS counselors, and then we have students with disabilities with open VR cases served by VR counselors. So it's really important that agencies understand that it's all different counselors that are going to be referring and coordinating these services, and especially that we still have tons of college students under 22 who could benefit from these services, and they're the ones that tend to be working more like during the summer as well. We're trying to up the number of high school students that have work experiences, but just keep that in mind. And so maybe for a college student, it might make sense just to do the individual service because it might be hard to coordinate a group. But we just don't want to lose sight of all the different people involved with PREETs, and it's just not one group of counselors, and it's not just students in high school.
So what I hear you saying, Jess, it's not going to be like a PREETs VR. It's more that we're getting people to think students with disabilities.
Exactly.
Service to students with disabilities. Yeah.
And it's been hard for that switch. Yeah, because we presented things as, PREETs, but it's just students with disabilities, and they are, they're both sides of the house. So they're potentially eligible or VR. Yep. So all of our staff have to know about the different services out there for them. And then likewise, all of our partners should know that pre-employment transition services are available to any type of DARS client who is a student with a disability.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay. And in terms of the group and individual sessions, one of the reasons why I brought up maybe doing a little survey as part of the documentation for the group sessions is because there might be people in the group session that don't want to say, hey, I didn't really understand what I'm supposed to do, I need help. But they might indicate in a survey that, yes, I do think that an individual session might be helpful. So the survey responses might be a way for us to gauge, which of the clients who received a group session might need a one-on-one. And it might help the counselors gauge that too. Just a thought.
So if you did that, Michael, and we were trying to project funds for a vendor service, for example, we could maybe budget that, put that into our budget for the month that we submit to Jessica or whoever for vendor services, cost services, or.
Yes, right.
Right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I got you.
Any other questions on this service? And like Jessica said, just remember that it's not going to be overnight that you're going to get authorizations. It's going to take a while for us to roll this out. But just remember that if you're doing MAC sessions now, if you've done the financial empowerment trainings, then you already are certified to do this service too. There's no additional trainings that you need to take at this point.
Do you guys have any questions or any requests for additional information you feel you need so that you could be prepared to provide this new service?
Not at this point. I think you all have covered it well. It's just going to be a matter of, I'm sure as soon as we go to do it, we'll have more questions at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and we're always available. So if you have anything that comes up, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to help.
And so then in the meantime, if you guys are interested in actually providing this, can you email David, Mike, and me to let us know so we can set you up in the system? And if you aren't interested in, looking how to develop and provide this service now, that's fine. I mean, you could decide in a month that you want to and let us know, but we just need to be able to know who's actually going to offer this so that when we train the field staff, they know who they can potentially refer to.
And this is David. I want to do two things. First, thank you all for every time we have added a WISA service prior to this, it has literally taken a year or two for services to be authorized with anything more than one or two. And Mike, Jessica, and I were extremely surprised and frankly not 100% prepared for how quickly MAC services were not only authorized, but globally across the state. So thank you all for working with us. In the past, and two examples are, we rolled out the financial health assessment 18 months prior to this, and in the first 4 months of MAC, we had already tripled the amount of authorizations. So, usually we have the time to really tweak these in the first few services, and we didn't get that, which is a good problem to have. It shows the work that you've all done has really made an impact on how counselors view this related to the VR process. But we're really trying to kind of make it better and better so that the clients get what they need, the counselors get information to use to promote work, and that you have a good example and idea of what you're doing and not running around thinking, is this right or is that right? So I really greatly appreciate it. And the other thing I just want to ask is, I know you represent different organizations. We are working on setting up the trainings to do the other piece so that more staff can be trained. And I want to thank you all, because you took that chance at the beginning when we didn't know that this would turn into paid services. We hoped it would. But you going through those trainings, like I think, Missy, for you, you came up to Northern Virginia on a day that maybe you wouldn't have. And as we build this stuff, your ability and willingness to kind of go along has allowed us to grow some of these. So really, really appreciate it. And I think we will try to prioritize getting our first dates for the Northern Virginia area to get those other WISAs involved. And I will say, Mike, all the other trainings except the financial empowerment are available online at this point. Is that correct?
That's correct. The webinars that we did for NDI or with NDI are available online for the financial capability resource mapping and the financial health assessment. If there's anybody on the line that does not have access to those, you can shoot me an email and I can send those to you.
Where are they at, Michael?
I'll send you the link. It's on the National Disability Institute website. I think everybody on the...
Actually, Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it reminded me we need to find out where those are going to be stored going forward, because the lead center is about to not exist. But Matt, I would highly recommend, we really tried to promote these, and they were designed for VR counselors as well. So
Sure.
The session on the financial health assessment actually includes a VR counselor that had used the tool, talking about how they used it for counseling and guidance.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've attended the presentations you guys have done. I don't think I did any webinars. So if you have some, I'd be interested in taking them myself, just for my own information,
Of course, Matt, I'll send those to you. That's no problem.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
There's 3 of them. They're about an hour each.
Okay. Yeah, this is a good week for me. I have no school, so I'm trying to catch up on a whole ton of things.
Also, Michael, did you say you were going to send out the new list to me? I'd like to be able to show the new service that's going to be coming out to those who make decisions.
Of course, yeah. I'll send a link to the updated manual out to everybody. I just updated it, so that'll be coming.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yep, no problem. Okay, any other comments, questions, or concerns about this new service or anything else that you want to add regarding Max?
Hey, yeah, it's Jess again. 2 quick things. First, I think we forgot to mention that this new service is also available to individuals who might not meet that definition of a student with a disability, and that's also probably where the individual option would come in. So we still have plenty of 23, 24-year-olds or, 20-year-olds not in school that need help with budgeting. And so that's something that their counselor could coordinate for. So this is considered both a pre-employment transition service as well as for those individuals who aren't students, they could still access it as a VR service. Just to let you guys know. And then, just to thank everyone again for participating today, but especially for, being the leaders and providing these new services, which are really, really useful and needed for the students. And thanks for hanging in there with us during the initial rollout where it is a little bit bumpy sometimes.
Oh, thank you all.
And you all, gave us some great suggestions and feedback on how we can improve on the MAX services, and that's greatly appreciated. Appreciate your time and your participation today. And with
No
that,
problem. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, with that, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll be done a little bit early.
All right.
But again,
thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome. And again,
Thank you
if
all
there's
very much.
anything that comes up, any more questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to address them in any way we can.
Thank you, Mike.
I appreciate everything, you guys.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Good. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Real quick, how'd your interview go?
Went well. They are going to go ahead and admit me in the program. Joan Kester thought that I was a really good fit. But I don't know about the scholarship yet.
Okay, I am so I wish I thought